In these stories, humans come face to face with nature's fiercest predators, and the outcomes are anything but predictable. From a photographer's deadly obsession to a rescue team battling a horde of aggressive bears, and even a mysterious ancient site guarded by bears, each tale reveals the dangers of crossing nature's boundaries. So join us in this video as we explore 6 jaw-dropping stories of grizzly bear encounters, survival, and shocking discoveries. On the crisp morning of October 5, 2024, Cedar Creek, a small town nestled at the edge of the dense forests of Montana, was suddenly thrown into chaos. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden light over the quiet streets when an enormous grizzly bear charged straight into the local police station. The town, known for its peaceful surroundings and occasional wildlife sightings, had never seen anything like this before. The police station, located near the edge of the forest, had its doors smashed open as the bear, enraged and confused, burst inside. Officer Jenna Morales, a seasoned law enforcement officer in her late 30s, was one of the first on the scene. Jenna had a unique background. Before joining the force, she had worked in wildlife conservation. Her understanding of animals, especially large predators like bears, had made her an invaluable asset to the Cedar Creek Police Department. But nothing in her experience had prepared her for this moment. The grizzly was massive, easily weighing over 800 pounds, and its sheer size and strength were terrifying. The animal was not just lost, it was angry. Jenna rushed to the scene, her heart pounding, but she knew she had to remain calm. The bear had already breached the station's defenses, and officers inside were scrambling to contain it without causing harm to themselves or the animal. The bear roared, swiping at desks and overturning furniture, its powerful body thrashing as it tried to find a way out of the building. As the other officers struggled to get a handle on the situation, Jenna quickly took charge. She knew that shooting the bear would only escalate the danger, both for the animal and the people in the station. With her background in wildlife, Jenna understood that the bear wasn't attacking out of malice. It was disoriented, likely pushed out of its habitat by recent environmental changes. Cedar Creek had experienced more wildlife disturbances in recent months, a troubling sign of something much larger going on in the surrounding wilderness. Jenna ordered the officers to clear the room and give the bear space. She grabbed a tranquilizer gun kept in the station for such emergencies, knowing that sedating the bear was their best chance to end the chaos safely. But as she carefully approached the bear, it charged again, slamming into a wall and sending bookshelves crashing down. The officers, keeping their distance, held their breath as Jenna aimed the tranquilizer. The dart hit the bear's shoulder, and though it growled in pain, it staggered slightly. But the adrenaline coursing through its massive frame meant the tranquilizer would take a few minutes to work. Jenna stayed at a safe distance, watching as the bear continued to thrash, knocking over file cabinets and pushing against the windows. The tension in the air was thick, every second stretching out as the bear's movements finally slowed. Within minutes, the massive predator collapsed, its body heavy with exhaustion as the tranquilizer finally took effect. The officers exhaled in relief, but the room was a mess, and the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. This was no ordinary bear sighting. The attack was part of something much larger, something that Jenna couldn't ignore. In the aftermath of the incident, Jenna's thoughts immediately turned to the disturbing pattern of wildlife behavior that had been escalating in recent months. She had noticed a rise in bear encounters, but this attack was the most aggressive yet. As she stood in the wreckage of the police station, Jenna knew this wasn't an isolated event. The grizzly had been driven from its habitat, and she needed to find out why. As the grizzly lay sedated on the floor of the police station, Officer Jenna Morales quickly shifted her focus from the immediate threat to the bigger picture. The attack wasn't just an accident. It was a sign of something much deeper. She had seen signs of wildlife becoming increasingly aggressive over the past year, and this incident was a wake-up call for the entire town of Cedar Creek. Jenna knew she couldn't investigate this alone. She needed the expertise of someone who understood both the environment and the animals better than anyone else. That afternoon, she reached out to Dr. Liam Turner, a respected wildlife biologist who had spent years studying the behavior of bears in the region. Liam had been following the disturbances around Cedar Creek closely, and when Jenna called him, he immediately agreed to help. Together, they started gathering information from local hunters, farmers, and residents who had also noticed unusual animal behavior. Reports of bears wandering too close to human settlements, other wildlife showing erratic patterns, and even predators fighting for food near town were becoming more common. Liam suggested they start by looking into the root cause of the changes in animal behavior, beginning with the forests surrounding Cedar Creek. He'd already heard rumors of illegal logging and land development projects that had been encroaching on wildlife habitats, disrupting the natural balance. The evidence pointed to a larger problem. Human activity was pushing wildlife to its limits, forcing animals like the grizzly bear into unfamiliar and dangerous areas. Jenna and Liam decided to explore the forests surrounding the town. What they found was alarming. Large sections of trees had been cleared, leaving the forest bare and exposed. Heavy machinery tracks led deep into the woods, evidence of unauthorized logging operations. This was more than just a small disruption. It was the destruction of the grizzly bear's home. The bear that had charged into the police station had likely been pushed out of its territory by the deforestation, confused and desperate for a place to survive. With this information, Jenna and Liam knew they had to act quickly. The situation was no longer just about one bear. It was about an entire ecosystem at risk. They gathered their findings and presented them to the town's council, urging immediate action to halt the illegal logging and work toward protecting the remaining forests. The stakes were high, not just for the wildlife, but for the people of Cedar Creek, whose safety was directly tied to the health of the environment around them. The aftermath of the attack had shaken the town deeply. Many residents were now questioning the balance between development and conservation. For Jenna, the incident forced her to reflect on her dual roles as both a protector of her community and an advocate for the natural world. Working alongside Liam, she began to push for sustainable conservation efforts, advocating for better land management practices and stricter laws. Ryan Carter found himself alone in the remote wilderness of Alaska. What had started as an exciting solo backpacking trip had quickly turned into a fight for survival. Ryan, an experienced outdoor enthusiast in his early 30s, had always been drawn to the wild. He had spent years hiking through forests, mountains, and deserts, pushing his limits to experience the most isolated corners of the world. Alaska had always been his dream destination. The rugged beauty of the land called to him, promising both adventure and solitude. But Alaska's wilderness was unforgiving. Ryan had joined a small group of backpackers to explore the dense forests and snow-covered mountains, but a sudden and unexpected blizzard had separated him from the group. The storm came out of nowhere, transforming the landscape into a whiteout. The howling wind combined with the blinding snow made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Before he knew it, Ryan was alone, cut off from his fellow hikers and had no way to contact them. His radio had been damaged, and the deep snow made any attempt to retrace his steps impossible. Now, days later, the blizzard had passed, but the bitter cold remained. The remote Alaskan wilderness around him stretched for miles in every direction, a vast and harsh terrain of snow, ice, and towering pine trees. Ryan had limited supplies, just a small amount of food, a knife, a fire starter, and a basic shelter. His survival skills were strong, but even the best preparation couldn't erase the deep isolation he now felt. Worse, he knew the area was home to grizzly bears. Ryan was well aware that grizzly bears in Alaska had become more aggressive in recent years. Climate change had affected their food sources, and the bears, struggling to find enough to eat, had been wandering closer to human camps. Ryan had read about these incidents before his trip, but he had never imagined he would face such a danger alone. As he trudged through the snow, his breath heavy in the freezing air, he kept his senses sharp, listening for any signs of movement in the dense forest. It was on one cold evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, that Ryan's worst fear became reality. While searching for a safe place to set up camp, he saw movement in the corner of his eye. A massive grizzly bear emerged from behind the trees, its fur thick and matted, its eyes focused directly on him. Ryan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The bear, clearly hungry and agitated, began to approach. Ryan had no time to think. His instincts kicked in. He knew he couldn't outrun a bear in these conditions. Slowly, he reached for his bear spray, a crucial tool for protection, but the snow made it difficult to move quickly. The bear let out a deep growl and started to close the distance between them. Ryan backed away, trying to maintain eye contact while preparing to defend himself. The encounter turned into a desperate struggle for survival. The bear charged, and Ryan managed to deploy the spray just in time, but the bear was relentless. In the confusion, Ryan stumbled, falling hard into the snow. His arm scraped against the ice, and pain shot through his body as the bear swiped at him. Ryan rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the powerful claws. The bear, disoriented by the spray, backed off for a moment, but Ryan knew it wasn't over. Ryan lay in the snow, his heart racing as the massive grizzly bear shook its head, trying to recover from the bear spray. He knew he had only a few moments to act before the bear regained its full senses. His arm throbbed from the fall, and he could feel the sting of the icy air biting at his skin. But survival instincts took over. Slowly, he inched backward, keeping his eyes on the bear. The animal was clearly agitated, its hunger making it even more dangerous than usual. Ryan knew he had to find shelter, fast. He spotted a small cluster of trees nearby, their thick trunks offering a potential barrier between him and the bear. Gritting his teeth, he forced himself to his feet, every movement filled with pain, and stumbled toward the trees. The bear, though still recovering, began to follow. Its deep growls echoed through the forest, a constant reminder of the danger that followed. As Ryan reached the trees, he found a low outcropping of rocks covered in snow, creating a small natural alcove. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. He squeezed into the space, using the rocks and trees to shield himself as much as possible. The bear approached, sniffing the air, clearly trying to track him. Ryan's breath came in short bursts, his body shaking from both cold and fear. The bear stopped just outside the trees, pacing back and forth, frustrated by the barrier between them. Ryan pressed himself further into the alcove, hoping the bear would lose interest. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the bear circled, its massive form casting long shadows across the snow. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the bear let out one last growl and turned away, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. Exhausted and injured, Ryan stayed in the alcove for hours, unwilling to risk another encounter. As dawn began to break, he cautiously emerged from his hiding spot. His arm was swollen and bruised, and his body ached from the night's ordeal, but he was alive. The encounter with the bear had left him shaken, but he knew he couldn't afford to stop. Survival was now his only focus. As the days passed, Ryan's supplies dwindled, and the harsh wilderness tested every ounce of his endurance. One afternoon, while trying to gather firewood, he stumbled upon a small trail in the snow. Human footprints. With renewed hope, he followed the tracks until he came upon a remote cabin, where he met Maya, a local native Alaskan guide. Maya, skilled in the ways of the land, immediately understood the danger Ryan had faced. Together, Ryan and Maya spent days tracking the signs of grizzly bears in the area. Through their journey, Maya explained the delicate balance between humans and wildlife and how recent environmental changes had forced the bears to become more aggressive. Logging and illegal land development had disrupted the bears' natural food sources, pushing them closer to human territory. Amelia Brooks set out on one of the most ambitious missions of her career. A renowned wildlife photographer, Amelia had built her reputation on capturing stunning images of elusive animals in their natural habitats. She had traveled the globe, from the rainforests of the Amazon to the tundra of the Arctic, always seeking that one perfect shot. Her work had been featured in prestigious magazines and documentaries, and she was admired for her patience and dedication to showcasing the beauty of wildlife. But it was the untouched wilderness of Montana that had captured her heart. The vast, rugged landscape was home to some of the last truly wild grizzly bears in North America. Amelia had long dreamed of photographing one of these majestic creatures up close, especially a rare shot of a grizzly in a completely natural setting, undisturbed by human presence. Her latest goal was to photograph a mother bear with her cubs, an image that had eluded her for years. Driven by her obsession, Amelia ventured deeper into the wilderness than she had ever gone before. She had ignored multiple safety advisories about staying too long in known bear territory. Park rangers had warned her about the dangers of venturing alone into these areas, especially during the fall when grizzly bears were preparing for hibernation and more aggressive as they sought food. But Amelia's passion for photography had always outweighed her caution. She believed that the only way to capture the essence of these was to immerse herself in their environment. On that crisp September morning, Amelia hiked deep into the dense forest of northern Montana, setting up her camera equipment near a hidden clearing. She spent hours building elaborate hides and positioning traps with remote triggers, all in an effort to get as close as possible without disturbing the bears. The thrill of getting the perfect shot consumed her, and the more she pushed her limits, the closer she came to crossing a dangerous line. Finally, after days of waiting, Amelia's patience paid off. She spotted a large female grizzly bear moving cautiously through the trees, two small cubs trailing close behind. Her heart raced as she aimed her camera, careful not to make any sudden movements. The mother bear was massive, her thick fur rippling as she walked, her cubs playful and curious at her side. Amelia held her breath, clicking the shutter as quietly as possible, capturing the moment she'd been chasing for so long. But as she focused on getting the shot, she didn't notice the shift in the bear's behavior. The mother bear, sensing something was wrong, became agitated. She stopped, sniffing the air, her protective instincts kicking in. In her determination to capture the image, Amelia had ventured too close to the bear's space. The mother bear, seeing Amelia as a threat, let out a deep growl and charged. Amelia had no time to react. The bear was on her in seconds, its massive claws swiping at her as she tried to back away. The force of the attack knocked her to the ground, her camera flying out of her hands. Pain shot through her body as the bear struck again, its powerful jaws snapping dangerously close to her face. Severely injured and in shock, Amelia struggled to move, but the bear loomed over her, angry and protective. Amelia lay on the cold ground, her body aching from the force of the grizzly bear's attack. Blood trickled from deep gashes on her arm and side, and every breath sent a sharp pain through her chest. The bear hovered over her for a moment, its fierce eyes locked on her. But then, as quickly as the attack had begun, the mother bear turned and retreated, her cubs trailing behind her into the forest. Amelia was left alone, her body bruised and broken, surrounded by the vast wilderness that had once felt so full of wonder but now seemed terrifying and unforgiving. She knew she was badly injured, and without immediate help, her chances of survival were slim. Amelia struggled to sit up, her hands trembling as she reached for her backpack. The cold air stung her wounds, but the adrenaline pumping through her veins pushed her to keep moving. She managed to pull out a basic first aid kit, fumbling with the bandages as she tried to stop the bleeding. Her mind raced, replaying the encounter with the bear over and over, and for the first time she questioned her obsession with getting the perfect shot. Was it really worth risking her life? As night began to fall, the temperature dropped, and Amelia knew she had to find shelter. Her body was weak, and every step was a battle against the pain, but she couldn't stop. She moved slowly, searching for a safe place to wait out the night. Finally, she found a small overhang of rocks, offering some protection from the cold. She crawled underneath it, her body shaking from both pain and exhaustion. Alone in the dark, she reflected on the choices that had led her here. Amelia had always pushed the boundaries in her quest to photograph wildlife. But now, as she sat in the freezing wilderness, injured and vulnerable, she began to realize the cost of her relentless pursuit. Her obsession had led her to ignore the ethical boundaries that protected both her and the animals she loved to photograph. She had intruded on the mother bear's space, and in doing so, she had endangered both herself and the bear. In the quiet darkness, she understood that her passion for capturing the wild had blinded her to the risks she was taking. The night was long and cold, but Amelia managed to stay awake, determined to survive. When morning came, she knew she had to find a way to signal for help. Weak and barely able to walk, she used her camera's remaining battery to activate a beacon she had attached to it, hoping that someone would pick up the signal. Hours passed and Amelia's strength faded, but just as she was about to lose consciousness, she heard the distant sound of a helicopter. In the aftermath of her rescue, Amelia's injuries took months to heal. But the deeper wounds were in her mind, where the experience had left a lasting mark. The encounter with the bear forced her to confront her motivations and the ethical boundaries of wildlife photography. Captain Marcus Reed and his specialized wildlife rescue team were dispatched to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. The park, known for its stunning landscapes and diverse wildlife, had become the focus of a growing crisis. Over the past few weeks, multiple reports of aggressive grizzly bears threatening campers and hikers had been pouring in, causing panic among visitors and concerns for public safety. The park, which had long been a haven for both tourists and wildlife enthusiasts, now faced a situation where human safety and wildlife preservation were at odds. Captain Marcus Reed had been leading wildlife rescue missions for over 15 years. He was known for his calm demeanor under pressure and his deep knowledge of wildlife behavior. Marcus had always believed in finding a balance between protecting human lives and conserving the natural world. His team consisted of 6 experienced members, each with their specialized skills. Dr. Laura Kim, a wildlife veterinarian with expertise in large carnivores, and Jake Sullivan, a field tracker known for his sharp instincts. The team also included Sam Daniels, a former park ranger skilled in handling dangerous situations, and Carla Evans, an ecologist who had studied grizzly bear populations for years. The team's mission was clear. They needed to investigate the reasons behind the sudden surge in grizzly bear aggression and develop a strategy to protect both the park's visitors and the bears. As they gathered their gear and headed into the park, the weight of the situation settled over them. The bears were more than just a danger to the hikers. They were acting out of desperation, and the team needed to figure out why. The terrain in Rocky Mountain National Park was rugged, with cliffs, dense forests, and rivers cutting through the landscape. The team had to navigate these challenges carefully, knowing that the bears could be anywhere. Reports had indicated that the bears were no longer staying in their usual habitats. Instead, they had been seen wandering dangerously close to campsites and hiking trails. The park rangers had already closed off certain areas, but the bears' unpredictable behavior made the situation more dangerous by the hour. As they ventured deeper into the park, Jake noticed the first sign of trouble: large bear tracks near a popular campsite. The tracks were fresh, meaning the bear was likely still close by. Marcus ordered the team to spread out but stay alert. Just as they began examining the area, they heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. The ground trembled slightly as a massive grizzly bear appeared, its eyes wide with aggression. The team stayed calm, backing away slowly, but the bear wasn't backing off. It seemed agitated, more aggressive than usual, and its movements were unpredictable. The bear reared up on its hind legs, letting out a deep growl that sent shivers through the group. Marcus knew that something was terribly wrong. This was not normal behavior for a bear, even one that had wandered into human territory. Dr. Kim quickly assessed the situation, noting the bear's unusually thin appearance. It was clear the bear was struggling to find food. After a tense few moments, the bear backed down and wandered off, leaving the team shaken but unharmed. They regrouped and started discussing the next steps. Carla suggested that something was affecting the bear's food sources, possibly a disease. It would explain why so many bears were suddenly venturing into human areas, driven by desperation and hunger. As the team delved deeper into their investigation, they discovered that a disease affecting the local vegetation had wiped out large portions of the bear's natural food supply. The bears, unable to find enough sustenance, were growing aggressive out of sheer starvation. The realization hit the team hard. The grizzly bears were not acting out of aggression for their own sake, but because their food sources had been severely diminished. The disease affecting the vegetation had left the bears desperate, and in their hunger they were venturing too close to humans. Captain Marcus Reed gathered the team to strategize. Protecting the visitors in the park was their priority, but they also had to find a way to help the bears without causing more harm. Dr. Laura Kim proposed a solution: vaccinating the bears to halt the spread of the disease among their population. It was a risky plan. Not only would they have to tranquilize the bears to administer the vaccine, but they would also need to do it in the unpredictable and dangerous environment of the park. The team debated the risks. Jake, the field tracker, was concerned about how close they would have to get to the bears, especially in their current aggressive state. Sam, the former park ranger, supported the idea, seeing it as the only long-term solution that could prevent further attacks. Tensions began to rise within the group as they debated the best course of action. Marcus, ever the calm leader, knew they needed to find a balance between the safety of the park's visitors and the survival of the bears. After much discussion, he made the call. They would proceed with the vaccination plan, but only after implementing safety measures to minimize the risks. The next day, the team set out to locate the most affected areas where the bears had been seen. They split into 2 groups, each carrying the necessary equipment for tranquilizing the bears and administering the vaccine. As they moved through the thick forest, the weight of the situation hung over them. Every sound in the woods could be a sign of a bear nearby, and they had to stay alert. By midday, they encountered their first bear, a large male that appeared exhausted and underweight. Dr. Kim prepared the tranquilizer, and Marcus ensured the team was ready. They worked quickly, successfully tranquilizing the bear and administering the vaccine. It was a small victory, but they knew it was just the beginning. As the day went on, the team repeated the process with other bears, each time growing more confident but also more aware of the dangers. Late in the afternoon, they encountered another aggressive bear, its eyes wild with hunger. This one was harder to subdue, charging at the team before they could administer the tranquilizer. In the chaos, Jake narrowly avoided being injured, but eventually they managed to calm the bear and proceed with the vaccination. The mission continued for several days, with the team working tirelessly to ensure the safety of both the bears and the park's visitors. They vaccinated as many bears as they could find, hoping to stop the spread of the disease and reduce the animals' desperate behavior. In the aftermath of the operation, the park began to recover. The vaccinated bears started returning to their natural behaviors, and reports of attacks decreased. The team had succeeded in protecting the visitors, but they had also learned an important lesson about the delicate balance between human activity and wildlife preservation. Park Ranger Lucas Hayes was conducting a routine patrol deep in the dense forests of Oregon's Mount Hood National Forest. The forest, known for its towering trees and rugged trails, was a place Lucas had grown familiar with over his years as a ranger. He had dedicated his life to protecting the land and its wildlife, guiding visitors safely through the wilderness and ensuring the park remained pristine. Lucas, a man in his mid-30s, was passionate about the environment, and his connection to nature had deepened during his years of service. That morning, Lucas had received reports of unusual disturbances near a secluded trail at the northern edge of the park. Visitors had complained about loud noises at night, as well as scattered signs of a large animal, perhaps a bear, disrupting campsites. This wasn't entirely uncommon in the park, but something about these reports piqued Lucas's curiosity. Bears were native to the area, but such aggressive behavior near popular trails was rare, especially for a grizzly bear, which had been spotted in the park only a handful of times over the years. Lucas set out alone, confident in his abilities to investigate and assess the situation. The trail was narrow and winding, surrounded by thick brush and towering evergreens. As he moved deeper into the forest, the usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie quietness. Lucas's senses heightened as he felt the atmosphere change, the weight of the forest pressing down around him. Suddenly, a loud crashing noise broke the silence. Lucas froze, his heart pounding as he scanned the trees. Before he could react, a massive grizzly bear appeared, emerging from the undergrowth with alarming speed. The bear, its eyes wild with aggression, charged toward him. Lucas barely had time to pull his bear spray from his pack as the bear lunged. The force of the impact knocked him to the ground, his body slamming hard against the forest floor. Lucas felt the bear's weight on top of him, its claws tearing at his arm and chest. Pain shot through his body, but his training took over, and he managed to deploy the bear spray directly into the animal's face. The bear let out a roar, shaking its head in confusion before retreating into the thick forest. Lucas lay still for a moment, his body throbbing with pain, but he knew he had to move. His injuries were severe, and staying out in the open wasn't an option. Weak and disoriented, Lucas stumbled through the forest looking for any kind of shelter. That's when he spotted it, a hidden cave entrance, partially concealed by rocks and overgrown plants. The cave appeared ancient, its entrance marked by strange symbols etched into the stone. Desperate for protection, Lucas made his way inside. As he collapsed against the cool rock, his mind spun with questions. Who had created this cave? And why was it hidden so deep in the forest? As he gathered his strength, Lucas's eyes adjusted to the dim light, and he realized the cave was filled with artifacts, old tools, carvings, and symbols he didn't recognize. This wasn't just a random hiding spot. It was something far more significant. The cave seemed to hold secrets long forgotten, and Lucas couldn't help but wonder if the bear was connected to it, somehow protecting the sacred site. But before he could explore further, his injuries overwhelmed him, and he knew he needed help fast. Lucas woke up hours later, his body aching from the bear attack. The dim light in the cave had shifted slightly, and the air was cooler. His injuries, though painful, weren't as life-threatening as he had feared, but he knew he wouldn't last long without proper medical attention. Despite the pain, Lucas's thoughts kept returning to the cave. The ancient carvings on the walls and the artifacts scattered around hinted at something far more significant than he had anticipated. Summoning what little strength he had left, Lucas began to examine the cave more closely. The symbols etched into the walls were unfamiliar, but they seemed to tell a story. Some resembled animals, while others appeared to represent people, possibly indigenous to the region. The carvings were intricate, and the tools and artifacts suggested that the cave had been a sacred place for those who once lived there. As he explored deeper into the cave, Lucas realized he had stumbled upon something extraordinary, an ancient site that had been hidden away for generations. But there was more. As Lucas looked around, he found signs that the cave wasn't just important to humans, it was also significant to the wildlife in the area. The grizzly bear that had attacked him might have been more than just a wild animal defending its territory. It could have been a protector of the land, guarding the sacred site from intruders. Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that the bears were connected to the cave's history, as if they had always been part of the landscape's story. Still weak and in pain, Lucas knew he needed help. He managed to pull out his radio and, with a shaky voice, called for assistance. Hours passed before a rescue team led by his colleague and trusted friend Dr. Elena Ramirez, an archaeologist who had worked in the area for years, arrived. When they found him, they were shocked by the extent of his injuries, but even more intrigued by what he had discovered. Elena, fascinated by the cave, began a preliminary examination of the site. She quickly confirmed that the artifacts and carvings were part of a rich, indigenous heritage that had been preserved for centuries. As they carefully gathered evidence, it became clear that this cave held immense cultural and historical importance, and they needed to protect it from outside exploitation. In the days that followed, Lucas and Elena worked together to uncover the full story of the cave. Meanwhile, they learned that a developer had plans to build in the area, which could destroy both the site and the natural habitat of the bears. The discovery put Lucas and Elena in a moral battle as they fought to preserve the land while balancing the growing pressures from those who wanted to exploit it for profit. Deep in the wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, Green Tech Industries found itself at the center of a growing controversy. The company, led by CEO Rebecca Lawson, had long been a leader in sustainable energy solutions. Green Tech prided itself on developing innovative projects that minimized environmental impact while providing renewable energy to communities across the world. However, their latest project, a massive hydroelectric dam, had sparked intense backlash. Located in a pristine wilderness area, the construction site disrupted a fragile ecosystem, particularly the habitat of the local grizzly bear population. Rebecca Lawson had built her career on the promise of sustainability, determined to prove that clean energy could exist in harmony with nature. With a background in environmental science and business, she had always believed that technological advancements could coexist with the natural world. The hydroelectric dam was her most ambitious project yet, and despite the criticism, she was confident that the long-term benefits outweighed the temporary disturbances to the environment. However, as the project progressed, reports of aggressive bear behavior near the construction site began to surface. The local grizzly bears, whose habitat had been severely disrupted, had started wandering closer to human settlements and the construction workers. This aggression was unheard of, even for such powerful predators. Normally reclusive and non-confrontational, the bears had become territorial and dangerous. Local communities were on edge, and the company's security team was growing increasingly concerned. Just days before, a coalition of grizzly bears had attacked a Green Tech security patrol near the dam. The attack was swift and unexpected, leaving several workers injured and causing a wave of fear to sweep through the company. Rumors began circulating that the forest was rebelling against the intrusion of human development, fueling concerns that the project had gone too far. Rebecca Lawson knew she needed to act quickly. The future of GreenTech's project and her reputation depended on finding a solution that would address both the escalating bear threat and the environmental concerns raised by activists. She decided to bring in Dr. Nathaniel Green, a wildlife expert who had dedicated his life to studying grizzly bear behavior. Nathaniel, with his decades of experience, had a deep understanding of the delicate balance between human activity and wildlife conservation. He had worked on numerous projects where development clashed with natural habitats, and he was no stranger to the challenges Rebecca now faced. When Nathaniel arrived at the site, it was immediately clear to him that the situation was far worse than he had imagined. The bears weren't simply reacting to the disruption of their territory. They were in survival mode. Their food sources had been reduced due to the changes in the environment caused by the dam's construction, forcing them into more aggressive behaviors. The once stable ecosystem had been thrown off balance, and the bears, now desperate, were lashing out in search of sustenance. As Rebecca and Nathaniel began their work, they uncovered another layer to the crisis. While studying the bears' patterns, Nathaniel discovered evidence suggesting that the situation had been exacerbated by sabotage. A radical faction of environmental activists had intentionally disturbed the bears' food sources, aiming to intensify the conflict and halt the dam's construction. The discovery left Rebecca in a difficult position. How could she navigate the political minefield of corporate interests, environmental preservation, and now sabotage? The stakes were high. The company's security team was on edge after the bear attacks, and the local community demanded answers. Meanwhile, Rebecca and Nathaniel needed to find a way to protect both the bears and GreenTech's investment in the dam. They had to balance the needs of nature with the demands of progress, all while ensuring the safety of everyone involved. The situation at the GreenTech construction site continued to escalate. As Rebecca Lawson and Dr. Nathaniel Green delved deeper into their investigation, they realized the gravity of the conflict they were facing. The sabotage had worsened the situation for the grizzly bears, and the ongoing disruptions were putting both the animals and humans at risk. The pressure was mounting, and time was running out to find a solution that would prevent further violence and destruction. Nathaniel suggested that the first step was to restore the balance in the bears' environment. He knew that if they could address the food shortages, the bears would no longer feel the need to venture so close to human activity. He proposed that GreenTech halt construction temporarily, giving them time to implement strategies that would help the local wildlife recover. Rebecca hesitated. Pausing the project would mean financial losses, and there was already pressure from investors and corporate partners to keep moving forward. But Rebecca also knew that without addressing the environmental impact, the attacks would continue, and the damage to both her company and the wilderness could be irreversible. Reluctantly, Rebecca agreed to Nathaniel's plan. GreenTech temporarily halted the construction of the dam, and the team worked closely with environmental experts to begin restoring the damaged ecosystem. They introduced a program to replant native vegetation, aiming to regenerate the natural food sources for the bears. Over the next few weeks, the team monitored the bears' movements, carefully observing whether the changes were making a difference. As the environment slowly began to heal, the aggression among the bears started to decrease. With food more readily available in their natural habitat, the bears stopped venturing so close to human settlements. The tension in the area eased, and the workers at the construction site could once again focus on their tasks without fear of another attack. However, the issue of sabotage still lingered. Rebecca and Nathaniel worked together to expose the radical faction behind the disturbances. Their investigation led them to uncover illegal activity aimed at creating chaos to stop the dam's construction. The group responsible was identified, and legal action was taken to prevent further interference. While some in the environmental activist community supported the group's intentions, many condemned their methods, acknowledging that there were more ethical ways to advocate for environmental protection.